And thank you for joining me here. I'm Don Ma. S&P 500 and Nasdaq closed higher on Wednesday as fresh economic data signaled a cooling U.S. economy and reinforcing expectations that Federal Reserve will pause interest rate hikes in September. S&P 500 index reached its highest in nearly 3 weeks, actually. This is after an ADP national employment report showed private payrolls increased by lower than expected, and that could be suggesting a softening labor market. Investors are now looking to the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, which is the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, and non-farm payroll numbers due on Thursday and Friday, respectively. And they'll be looking at that for more clues on interest rates. And trading activity has been pretty light this week ahead of the U.S. Labor Day holiday on Monday. And taking on Big Pharma. That's what President Biden is touting as he announces the first drugs to be targeted for price cuts. But drug companies are fighting back in court. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
And President Biden announced the first 10 drugs for which Medicare will be able to negotiate prices with drug companies. And Biden says it will help Americans save money on prescription drugs.
Today is the start of a new deal for patients, where Big Pharma doesn't just get a blank check at your expense.
Biden's Inflation Reduction Act last year gave Medicare the unprecedented authority to directly hash out drug prices with drug manufacturers. And President Biden, who's seeking re-election, is touting that step as one of the ways that he's improving the economy.
They started referring to my economic policy as Bidenomics. Well, guess what? It's working.
Yeah. The drugs selected for price-lowering talks include big-selling blood thinners Eliquis and Xarelto, as well as diabetes drug Jardiance. But consumers won't see any immediate savings as any negotiated price won't go into effect until 2026. And that's as the move is also getting strong pushback from major drug makers like Johnson & Johnson and Merck. They filed at least 8 lawsuits arguing that the government's price-controlling policy is unconstitutional, and they warn that shrinking profits can make drug companies even less willing to take the risks to develop new drugs. But the Biden administration said today that it's not concerned about these lawsuits.
We are very confident in the law, and we should recognize there is no part of the Constitution that prohibits Medicare drug negotiations.
The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has estimated that price negotiations will lower the number of new drugs coming to the market by 1% over the next 30 years. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Meanwhile, economic growth in the second quarter was slower than expected. The Commerce Department says gross domestic product rose 2%. That's slightly lower than the 2.4% the department initially estimated. GDP is the broadest measure of economic output. The latest estimate factored in more consumer spending and government exports and less business investment and inventories. Now, this is a good sign inflation might be weakening. The Federal Reserve has indicated more rate hikes could be coming if the economy didn't slow down more. And X, the social media company formerly known as Twitter, said Tuesday it would now allow political advertising in the U.S. from candidates and political parties and expand its safety and elections team ahead of the 2024 presidential election. Here's the report.
It's only just seen the return of a familiar face. Now political ads are also coming back to the social network formerly known as Twitter. X, as it's now called, says it will allow candidates and parties to place advertising ahead of the 2024 presidential election. Before Elon Musk acquired the company in October, Twitter had banned all such content since 2019. Then in January it started allowing so-called cause-based ads, which promote things like voter registration. It said it later planned to expand the types of permitted political ads. Now the network says it will ramp up its safety and elections team ahead of next year's poll. That follows questions about its readiness for the vote, after laying off many staff who worked on trust and safety. The new move should allow X to raise revenue at a time when many other advertisers have fled. In the turmoil since Musk's takeover, some firms have been concerned that their material could appear next to inappropriate content. X says it will also create a global advertising transparency centre. That's meant to allow people to see which political ads are being promoted on the network. X says it will still prohibit ads that include false information or seek to undermine confidence in elections.
And it seems like despite getting $190 billion in COVID money, schools across the country are struggling to catch up from pandemic-related challenges. Between March 2020 and March 2021, Congress authorized the money for K-12 schools about 6 times what they normally receive from the federal government in a normal year. But education experts say problems remain still. For example, Harvard University Center for Education Policy Research says the average student lost half a year of learning in math. Some students in some areas fell behind by more than a year and a half in math. School districts, which were given a lot of leeway in how to spend the federal aid, have just 1 year left to use the money. Some experts say that districts may need to change the way they plan to use the money to help close the learning gap. And all eyes on Wall Street this week following a much-anticipated speech by Chairman Jerome Powell of the Fed, who's hinting he's willing to hike interest rates again. So what does that mean for consumers and borrowers? Here's a closer look.
A Goldilocks speech from the Fed, making Wall Street and consumers a little nervous. On Friday at an economic summit in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said more rate hikes are still on the table.
We are attentive to signs that the economy may not be cooling as expected.
A hike in interest rates means higher borrowing costs for consumers with credit cards, home, car, and personal loans. This comes as mortgage rates are already sitting at a 22-year high. Experts say if you're looking to make a major purchase like a home or a car, either delay it or brace for higher costs. And expect stricter requirements when it comes to applying for a loan.
Bank lending standards have tightened and loan growth has slowed sharply.
The Fed's forecast follows several batches of data showing inflation is cooling, but the Fed isn't ruling out more aggressive action to bring down the pace of price increases.
2 months of good data are only the beginning of what it will take to build confidence that inflation is moving down sustainably toward our goal.
Powell says the Fed's target inflation rate is still 2%. As it aims to slow the increases in prices and cool down the overheated economy. But one prominent economist says the U.S. economy is stable and says the Fed can stop raising interest rates.
People are betting that the economy is pretty resilient, and if it starts to show signs that it isn't, expect those rates to come down.
This week, as investors soak in the Fed's message, there's concern it could send stocks plunging amid concerns continued rate hikes could tip the economy.
And if you've noticed packed airports this summer, well, you're not alone. It was the busiest air travel summer on record, and now it's about to be capped off. The Transportation Security Administration is expecting this Labor Day weekend to be 11% busier than last year's. 14 million people are likely to pass through airports between Friday and Wednesday. The most are forecast to travel on Friday. But don't think you're going to beat the crowds by heading out of town a day earlier. Thursday actually has the most flights scheduled of any day over the long weekend. The biggest monkey wrench this year is Hurricane Idalia. Tampa's airport is closed, and the storm could also bring treacherous travel conditions to other cities in the southeast. Now, you may also have noticed some changes to Google Flights. The site announced Monday it has unveiled 3 new features. When searching for Google Flights airfares, you can now see whether current prices for a particular flight are low, typical, or high. You can also let Google track prices for you and alert you if the price goes down significantly. And you may be offered a price guarantee option, so that if the price of your airfare goes down, you will get back the difference via Google Pay. And OpenAI is on track to generate more than $1 billion in revenue over the next 12 months from the sale of artificial intelligence software and computing capacity that powers it. The information is reported on Tuesday. Here's more.
OpenAI is on track to generate more than $1 billion in revenue over the next 12 months. That's according to a report in tech industry publication The Information. The company would make the money from sales of its artificial intelligence software and the computing capacity that powers it. OpenAI is the maker of ChatGPT, an AI bot which grabbed headlines when it was launched last year.
We are bringing search grounding in Bing to ChatGPT.
It's supported by Microsoft, which invested $10 billion into the company in January. ChatGPT is known for producing prose or poetry on command. Investors see its so-called generative AI as the next big growth area for tech companies. Beside ChatGPT, OpenAI also brings in revenue by selling access to its AI models for developers and enterprises. The company had earlier forecast $200 million in revenue for this year, but the information's report said OpenAI is generating more than $80 million in revenue per month, far higher than the $28 million over all of last year.
And the calendar is about to flip to September, and if tradition holds, Apple is about to make another splash and unveil its new products for the coming year. The company sent out press invites on Tuesday for an event it will hold in 2 weeks. Tech experts say Apple will likely unveil its iPhone 15 and iPhone 15 Pro. Now, the new devices are expected to feature a longer-lasting battery, faster charging, and a better camera. Plus, Apple will offer customers more color choices for their iPhone. The company also is expected to introduce newer versions of its Apple Watch and Apple Watch Ultra. Meanwhile, a U.S. judge has rejected Burger King's bid to dismiss a lawsuit claiming that it cheated hungry customers by making its Whopper sandwich appear larger than it actually is. Here's more.
A legal battle over the size of Burger King's Whopper is headed to court. A U.S. district judge in Miami rejected the burger chain's bid to dismiss a class action lawsuit brought by customers who say Burger King's in-store menu boards show a much bigger Whopper than what is actually served. Specifically, Burger King is accused of portraying its signature sandwich as having ingredients that, quote, overflow over the bun, making it appear 35% larger overall and with more than double the meat of an actual Whopper. Burger King, a unit of Restaurant Brands International, countered that it wasn't required to deliver burgers that look exactly like the picture. But the judge said it's up to a jury to decide what, quote, reasonable people would think, and whether Burger King's alleged actions amount to a breach of contract with its customers. Burger King and its lawyers did not immediately respond to requests for comment. The plaintiff's lawyer was not immediately available for comment. Burger King is not the only fast food chain accused of beefing up its images. McDonald's and Wendy's are defending against a similar lawsuit in Brooklyn, New York. And Taco Bell, a unit of Yum Brands, was sued last month in Brooklyn for selling Crunch Wraps and Mexican pizzas that allegedly contain only half as much filling as advertised.
And free samples or buy one get one free are terms businesses have used to give customers or potential customers an extra reason to take notice. So much notice that sometimes crowds form and shut down public events. And TV's Sean Marshall takes a look into some of the psychology behind free items that can affect a consumer's mind.
Free products can wield a potent influence over the human psyche. Consider this. Free PlayStation 5s and money once instigated a riot in New York City, turning a normally peaceful area into an out-of-control danger zone that spread into surrounding streets. But how? Why would legions of teenagers and young adults challenge law enforcement and create chaos in the metropolis? We summarized some information from a couple of psychology books about the effects of free products. Here's what they say. The psychology of free delves deep into the concept that the allure of free can sidetrack our logical thinking, compelling us towards impulsivity. We often overvalue what's free, allowing emotions to overshadow reason. As a case in point, risks seem more appealing when they come without a cost.
On Friday, we'll be doing a huge giveaway.
The free PlayStation 5 event was so chaotic that no PlayStation 5s were even given out. Twitch social media influencer Kai Cenat had to flee the scene shortly after arrival.
Yo, I cannot go out there with a book bag.
Influence, the psychology of persuasion, speaks on the principle of reciprocity, which states that people are more likely to say yes to someone who has given them something first. The book notes that people feel an inherent need to reciprocate when they receive something for free, which can lead to irrational behavior.
Bro, it was never my intentions for things to happen the way it happened. And I already seen the people lying already. I heard reporters say he didn't even have nothing to give away. And he just pulled up just to make a... No, bro. Like, come on. Y'all got to do y'all research a little bit better. You feel what I'm saying? But, yeah. That's about it. I've been praying.
Jonah Berger's The Psychological Power of Free Stuff asserts that the sensation of bagging a bargain when something's free can make us inflate its worth, even if the actual value is very little. It's essential to note that public frenzy over free giveaways isn't a one-off event. History has seen several such incidents. In 2018, Build-A-Bear's Pay Your Age promotion led to long lines and chaotic scenes that forced the event to shut down for safety concerns. And sneaker brands often announce limited free drops on platforms like Instagram. There have been instances where excited crowds gathered in hopes of snagging a pair, causing storefront damages and chaos. These incidents underscore the powerful lure of free, especially when combined with the instantaneous reach of social media.
The DOT has slapped American Airlines with the largest fine ever for holding passengers on board for too long. The U.S. Department of Transportation is ordering American to pay $4.1 million. That's for tarmac delays on 43 flights between 2018 and 2021. 5,800 passengers were impacted. Current rules require airlines to allow passengers the chance to get off the plane after 3 hours on the runway or 4 hours for international flights. Airlines also must provide water and a snack to trapped passengers. Half the money is to go to the government and the other half to passengers. If all the affected American Airlines passengers are paid equally, that amounts to about $350 per person. And to end the show on something fun, there's a piece of ham that's sold for $10 million at auction. Take a look.
Over in Kentucky, folks put their money where their mouths were after the State Fair's grand prize winning ham sold for a whopping $10 million at auction.
That's going to be $10 million, ain't it? $10 million.
Yep. Now, before you freak out, know that all of that meat money goes to charity, so the whole thing, shocking as it is quite Philhamthropic. Not quite as crazy, but only marginally. Check out the amazing butter sculpting going on at the Minnesota State Fair as an artist churns out likenesses of all 10 finalists of the state's annual Dairy Princess contest. The legendary effort is spread out over 10 days and all inside a 40-degree refrigerator. Finally, because I just can't resist, the annual Running of the T-Rexes went down at Emerald Downs in Auburn, Washington, and the popular yearly event, some 200 dinos strong this year, did not disappoint. It even ended in an exciting photo finish. Hey, what's more newsworthy than watching people in goofy costumes faceplant? Am I right? It's Dino-mite.
And that's all we have for you today on NTD Business. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.